Out this episode of Giant TV because we're talking about AI and what's going on with it today. I have two incredible guests. I have Jeff Oak, who's a successful Vistage chair in the Long Island area. I've got Ross Hartmann, who is the founder of Kiingo AI. And Ross is around the country helping business owners to embed his brain into their business to help with AI. We're going to get into the weeds in this episode, hear about Jeff, what he's doing with his dynamic CEOs he's working with, and we're going to hear from Ross about what is going on with AI and business owners, how to embed it in the business, and where it's at now, where it's going. Let's go check it out. Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock, founder and president of Giant Jaxx Media. Thanks for jumping on Giant TV. Really excited for my two guests today. I have Ross Hartmann, who is the founder of Kiingo AI and a Vistage speaker. Welcome, Ross.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and I have incredibly successful Vistage chair, Jeff Oak, out of Long Island, who's doing great things. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Great to be here, Paul. Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, love this topic, AI. Everybody's talking about it. Every business on the planet is either using it or trying to figure out how to use it. And so I want to jump right in, start with you, Jeff, because I know AI is coming up in your practice, but tell us about what you're doing, what you're building there at Vistage, and some of the industries you're working with and seats you may have available. I want to understand a bit about that.
Great. Thank you, Paul. I lead a variety of groups, but the two I want to focus on, one is what we call a CEO group and the other a small business group. The CEO group tends to be larger companies. They have executive teams, and they're dealing with a variety of issues associated with that. But I also have a group for smaller companies. Mm-hmm. They tend to be smaller both in revenue and in employees. If you imagine yourself as the one who's the chief cook and bottle washer and running operations and such, we have a place for a person in that situation as well. In terms of the industries, it's really quite broad across the two groups, ranging from real estate to engineering to surveying. We have someone in the food service business, in the hospitality business, specifically coffee shops. We have an environmental consulting firm. We have robotic process automation. Someone who runs a very large independent lumber yard, facilities management. What I pride myself on and what I love about both of my groups is the diversity of industries, the diversity of experience and background. Because as you would know, Paul, the variety of perspectives provides tremendous value to our members when they're processing a business issue. Oftentimes, the best question comes from the least expected individual from an industry that maybe has nothing to do with the topic of the issue being processed.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that offline, Jeff, as we talked about it. And for those who don't know, I mean, you're getting together monthly with all of your CEO members. Yes. And that's just an insane meeting because as you told me before, everyone's just kind of letting their guard down, bringing issues to the table, collaborating.
That's like? Right, yeah. Paul. I love our meet. I love my members. I love the groups. I love the meetings for some very specific reasons. Nothing is off the table. We create an environment of confidentiality. It's a non-competing environment that we carefully monitor. It's built on trust. On direct feedback, direct and timely feedback in the context of support. And a couple of our practices, one that is somewhat unique to Vistage is what we call carefrontation. We create an environment of caring.
Love it, yeah.
And we ask the tough questions that CEOs and business owners typically don't get asked. Yep. And that's what the members really prize and cherish.
Yeah, and then you're getting also together one-on-one outside of those monthlies, which I imagine are, you're getting into the weeds. Yes. With them, and they love it.
Yeah, no, the one-to-ones, the combination of those two things is extremely powerful.
Yeah,
Vistage might be the only organization of its kind that leverages both a peer advisory group we call it a peer advisory board, because it is like having your own personal board of directors with the one-to-ones in a executive coaching context. Those one-to-ones allow digging much deeper into the individual members' own issues and challenges and their business. And we leverage the two. For example, in one of the one-to-ones, somebody may bring up an issue and I'll say, so glad you brought that up. It's wonderful that we have two heads, your head and mine, thinking about this. It would be even better to have 15 or 16 heads giving insight into your issue. And so I'll encourage people in the one-to-ones to bring things to the group. Conversely, sometimes comments are made, perspectives are offered in the group setting that say to me, there's a deeper conversation here for us to explore privately one-to-one. So the mutual leveraging between the individual executive coaching privately once a month and the group meeting once a month is extremely powerful for turbocharging growth, not only in the traditional business metrics like revenue and profitability and market share and customer satisfaction, but also the growth of the leader. We talk a lot about bringing our best selves both to work and outside of work. We're all about enhancing our members' businesses and our members' lives.
Yep, and I love it all. And Ross, we're going to flow it on over to you because, as Jeff knows well, Vistage is all over AI. Jeff and his, leaders he's working with are all talking about it. You've got your thumb on the pulse of it, Ross. Tell us about AI. What do we need to know?
Yeah. So AI, obviously, it's something that's really taken off this year, a little bit of last year, but it's been around for a long time. But kind of what does it allow us to do? What new things does it allow us to do? Well, you might know, basically, it can help us respond to emails and draft emails and create blog posts, but that's really just scratching the surface if you're kind of familiar with what AI can do. So it can start to automate a lot of the routine tasks that we have as well. So if you have customer support or you have an internal IT desk, the AI can serve to make decisions as part of our automation workflows, essentially. So it can read emails, classify them, tag them, move them from here to there, really do that automation workflow, which is where we start to get huge benefit. But then, in talking to Vistage members and Vistage companies, there's so many industry specific things that they're looking to AI to do. So, with construction, they're looking to AI for takeoffs. They're looking to it for estimation for the bidding process. So we can look at the actual costs of previous projects that align with this project's requirements, draw parallels, and then start to go through the quoting process itself, which is truly amazing. You can see that in architecture. You can see the value that it can provide in organizing and filing documents in accounting, for instance, or any sort of HR, any sort of tax, anything that has a lot of documents, which is almost every company, right? Yep. I like to say, think about where your problems are in your business, and then we can probably find a place for AI to help solve them. So start with the problem first, and then we can move to AI.
Yeah. And Ross, how do businesses get involved in AI? I mean, I know you've talked about this before, but where do they start? What do they do?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because most people, when they've heard of ChatGPT, for instance, and then they're just like thinking, oh, it's nice. It can write some poems. It can, maybe make a coloring book or something. But it's just way beyond that. How do you get involved? I mean, the first thing I recommend is to just get it yourself. And I recommend GPT-4. So it's the paid version of OpenAI's ChatGPT. I really recommend getting that because it is just top of the line. There's no other model or language model AI that can beat GPT-4 at the moment. So Google says that they're going to be coming out with a new one that's going to beat that. We'll see if that's true. But just get access to GPT-4, the paid version yourself. It's $20 a month, and start playing with it. See where it can start to speed up your workflows. A quick litmus test for where I find it to be most valuable is things that are hard to do but easy to verify. So for instance, writing a memo to your entire company, maybe that takes you 30 minutes because you're trying to labor over the language. You want to make sure you really get this right, especially if it's on an important topic. It's so much easier to have an AI draft that first, and then you can go in and edit it. So get the technology, make use of it, learn a bit about it. And then once you're kind of beyond that, start looking into what's called prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is the process of learning what to put into the AI in order to get the most out of it. And most of the time, you can just talk to the AI like it's a human, and you'll tend to get pretty good responses. But for that last 20% of efficiency that you can extract, you would definitely want to look up prompt engineering.
Yeah, and it's interesting because real life example is you and I are working on a project for one of my businesses. We're rolling out a new business, and as an example, Jeff, this is incredible because launching new companies, we need to get messaging out to a huge network of people. Well, then they come in, they respond to the email. We're going to have an automated bot that's going to be able to answer questions for them. And then if they're interested, they can fill out a form. We'll have a proposal generated automatically that goes out to them and they can sign up. So we're right now working on processing this whole thing out. Every step of it. It's fascinating. And just before I was talking to Ross, if I was doing this before, it was just insane. I had to try to connect together, the labor involved. We freed up a couple team members, hugely by automating, had gone in there and manually done a lot of stuff. So just as an example of what it can do. And Jeff, I was going to ask you, as the industries you're working with, what sort of questions are coming up about AI? Are you finding members are using it, not using it? What are they trying to figure out?
I think so. We have a range of industries. We have some very, very tech savvy industries of the group, and some very at the opposite end of the spectrum. Direct human service, the lumberyard I mentioned, a coffee shop. I'm not saying that those things have no technology, but just by comparison, they're in a different place. And I think there's widespread interest in what does AI mean? How is it going to impact me externally? How might I deploy it internally in a way that preserves the value proposition of my business traditionally understood? People know the value proposition of what they've been doing for decades, and they know the customer response, et cetera. And they don't want to lose the good aspects of that, even as they think about deploying it. So I think if I just set aside the companies that are not very sophisticated technology, for example, I have one company in my group that does robotic process automation. So he's been doing a variety of things that are close cousins, to artificial intelligence, and even in fact some AI stuff in his business. And so he's certainly looking at in a very different way than the coffee shop or the lumber yard or the facilities maintenance, facilities management. I have someone in the transportation industry. So it's a broad range of questions, Paul, really based on where they are, if I can put it this way, in the technology spectrum of what they do. And people, there's frankly some worry. There's curiosity, but there's also a little bit of worry. Okay, well, how is this going to change customer relationships in a positive way rather than a negative way? So it's really a broad range of questions, Paul.
How would you address some of that, Ross?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in there. So I think what you said is just a perfect summation of where people are approaching this technology and how they're feeling about it. So I love that. One of the things you mentioned, well, first of all, on the concern side. So data privacy and security is obviously one of the biggest concerns that most companies have around this. And so you also mentioned, how do I actually go about integrating this technology, which is another huge concern or a big question. So a couple of things you can do to get the functionality and also maintain security and privacy. A few different options. One is to basically deploy an AI, a connection between your data and the AI in a secure way. So as long as you have the necessary cybersecurity things in place, like SSL and encryption and your connections and everything, you should be good. But what you essentially do is allow the AI to talk to your data or to ask questions of it and to extract data insights. And that's where it starts to become incredibly valuable. But what you can do beyond this is you can actually deploy a commercialized AI model to your company's cloud infrastructure. So if you're using Azure, for instance, you can deploy OpenAI's GPT 3.5 or 4. If you're on Google Vertex, you can deploy Palm 2. Or if you're on if you're on Google Cloud, you can deploy via Vertex, Palm 2. And if you're on AWS, you can deploy via AWS Bedrock. And what that allows you to do is have the model on your intranet to the point where your data doesn't actually leave your intranet. It doesn't go out over the internet. So for companies that really need that security and privacy, and I'll just be honest, most companies don't practically need that. But if you're in, medicine, you're a military contractor, law firm, then you need that super intense security, you probably want to deploy them together. And then, the next level beyond that is even potentially deploying an open source model, which is not a commercialized AI model, but it allows you to have complete kind of control over the model and who might be using it. But it does require more technical sophistication in order to maintain it and to update it. Right. So that's the concern around there. And then one of the other concerns is, how can this help me with my clients and how is this going to improve experience? I just want to say from an interesting study that I saw recently, where they had doctors on one side and AI on the other side providing diagnoses for patients, and then also just talking to them throughout the process. Well, the AI actually diagnosed more accurately than the doctors did. And then additionally, the patients rated the AI as having a better bedside manner. So when we're talking about customer experience, I think it's going to be a better customer experience as long as you implement it correctly and are using best practices.
Yeah. And another question that I sometimes hear, not just in my group, but in my group and then beyond it, is, how do I know when I'm talking to a real person and when I'm talking to a computer? And just give me transparency as it relates to that, so I know.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think a lot of that transparency is going to be key, because OpenAI even admitted there is no clear way, there's no 100% consistent way to tell the difference between something that's AI generated versus human generated. We have now entered that phase, which is pretty wild, honestly.
Wild,
right. Right.
Yeah, we've talked about before, there's some sites up like in TikTok and others that have these AI generated Hollywood people. Now they let you know it's AI generated, but you cannot tell the difference. The voice, the look, the mannerisms, it's really amazing.
Yeah. It really is. And I mean, this is a different conversation, but when we want to talk about some of the new features that are coming out, ChatGPT, for instance, you can now talk to it on your phone. And I mean, literally talk to it. So I was just having a conversation with it last night. I would just speak, and then it would respond back in a human voice in real time. And we were having a back and forth conversation. And then it can also generate images. It can recognize images and read, instructions. It can write its own code. It is, again, the surface level just doesn't even touch what's possible here.
You know what it cannot do, Ross, is change babies' diapers.
That is accurate. However,
Ross is about to have a baby. Ross about to have a baby.
I am.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the robots are not going to be ready in time for me. But they're working on some really amazing in-home robots that I suspect will hit the market in the next few years.
Yeah.
That's right. We don't need to go any deeper on the diaper front.
No, please, no.
No,
that's great. I mean, this is obviously an amazing topic. We could talk forever about this. I wanted to let everybody know who's watching this, wherever you're watching this, get connected to both Ross and Jeff, their information is going to be around this video up here, maybe over here. Find out what Jeff's doing with his groups. I know, Jeff, you have some seats open for your group.
Yes.
So someone wants to talk to you about that. And Ross, get one-on-one with him if you want a strategy session. And so appreciate it, both of you. Look forward to following the progress, and we'll see you here again.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Ross.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.